Addison Proponent, and I am so excited to welcome you to the first ever Disabilities Issues Forum in RGV. Thank you all for coming and supporting me and my friends in the issues that affects us in our families. People not with disabilities, they are people first. It is my honor to introduce you to one of the county members of the Disabilities Advocates Coalition, Marissa Pasilla.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Addison, for that amazing introduction. My name is Marissa Pasilla, and I am board member for Capable Kids Foundation. I'm incredibly happy to announce that this forum is being hosted by a newly founded Disability Advocates Coalition of the Rio Grande Valley, which is comprised of representatives of Capable Kids Foundation, myself, Miss Melanie Watson. We have Becca Bortnick, a parent advocate. We also have Miss Lydia Fonseca with Vail Association for Independent Living. And we also have Deborah Tamai with RGV Down Syndrome Association. Thank you so much. These ladies have been amazing to work with. Our mission is to promote systemic change and advance the rights and independence of individuals with disabilities in the Rio Grande Valley. We want this forum to bring awareness to the issues affecting our community and educate the voters by giving the candidates an opportunity to discuss their viewpoints on the issues as well as express their plans for the future. If y'all notice on your tables, you have some statistics related to disability issues in our area, as well as some information on the founding organizations. We're excited to have all of the candidates here. We are also very excited to see so many of our families here and so many familiar faces. Thank you so much for being here tonight, everybody. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Veronica Gonzalez, Vice President of Governmental and Community Relations and President of Easter Seals, who to graciously made us the effort to come and moderate this evening.
Thank you, Marisa, and good evening, everyone. As Marisa was mentioning, my name is Veronica Gonzalez, and I'm at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley, and this is part of our campus, so welcome to the University of Texas. And we also, I'm also on the, I've been on the board of Easter Seals for many years. I see my friend over there, Patty Roseland, that I work with all the time as a board member, and I'm president this year. So we know what it is to see people that live with disabilities all the time on a daily basis. And we thank you and are really excited about the fact that this room is full. So what we are going to do tonight, oh, and just a quick reminder, because there's going to be some streaming going on. I believe Capable Kids is doing this by Facebook Live, so if you want to follow them. But if you will please put your phones on silent or the ringer on silent so that it's not interrupting the candidates as they are answering questions. This is a nonpartisan event. It's not a debate, it's a forum, and so we will ask questions. We are asking the candidates to please not interrupt each other when they're answering questions. Allow them to, each party to answer their question. And then please don't take it wrong if I have to ask you to wrap up your answer because we're limited on time. And I think that's it, other than I don't have to tell you, let's all be very respectful. These are all very caring individuals that have taken the time to run for office because they want to make an impact in their community. And so whether you agree with them or not on an issue, we ask that you please respect them and thank them for all being here. So we're going to start with our first group of candidates. We have on that one, there's going to be 4 of them coming on up. We have Senator Eddie Lucio Jr. representing Senate District 27. And there are opponents, Ruben Cortez, who's currently on the State Board of Education. We have Mrs. Sarah Stapleton Barrera and Ms. Vanessa Tijerina. And if y'all will come up, you can sit wherever you like. And I'm going to call each group up and they'll answer a couple of questions. And then we will call the next group. We will have 3 groups tonight. Thank you all so very much for being here with us this evening. My first question, and what I'm going to do is rather than, I'm just going to start this way on this question and start the other direction on the next question, okay? So the first question is there have been several cases in Texas where students with disabilities demonstrate marked improvement in a general education setting, and it's been found that their behavior and social skills benefited due to their ability to model the conduct of their general education classmates. State and federal law provides that students with disabilities have a right to a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. So my question to you is, what steps would you take to ensure that Texas public schools and teachers have the resources and training necessary to meet the diverse needs of students with disabilities? And Ruben, let me start with you on that question.
You want me to come on up, or are you going to hand it
Yeah,
the mic?
come on up.
Thank you, Madam Great question. First, let me thank the Disability Advocates Coalition for hosting this event. And let me tell you that as someone who has a sister who's a special education teacher, I hear this all the time. And to your question, anytime that we can mainstream one of our students, I think we need to. And what I could tell you is that if I'm elected as your Texas Senator, one of the things I want to do is sit with organizations like this and all of those that form this coalition to ask you. The last thing I ever want to presume to know is what you need. I always think that the best way to make education policy in Texas, rather than making it from the Capitol to your classrooms or from our boardroom to your classrooms, is to take it and make policy from our classrooms to our boardroom. And the best way to make any policy that's going to work for every single child is for us to ask you how we can better serve our students in the state of Texas. So that's the approach that I would take, Veronica, is I would have meetings with organizations like this to get feedback so that we can then figure out how to turn that into legislation that better serves our students in the state of Texas.
And I'll ask the same question of you. Ms. Tijerina, if you want to come on up.
Hello, I'm Vanessa Tijerina. I'm the only Republican that's running for this Senate District 27 seat. Thank you all for having this. This means a lot. I do believe I'm the only candidate on the spectrum and with ADHD. This is important to me, this question, because I had to go before the State Board of Education to raise awareness to the 8.5% cap. And so I think the most important part of making sure that, and I mentioned, and I gave testimony to the State Board of Education regarding that 8.5% cap. And one of the things that I mentioned is that that cap was not identifying students that need a certain kind of curriculum. And in order for us to make sure that every student has a free FAPE, is what you call it, free appropriate public education, is to identify them. So for 10 years, Texas failed to identify 250,000 special education students for 10 years. And through some good folks that raised awareness to that, we now know how we could have done a little bit better. And so I think that in order for us to make sure that we give them that FAPE, free and appropriate public education, we need to first identify them and make sure that we know which students are general education and which students perhaps need a different kind of curriculum. We cannot enforce if you don't identify.
Thank you. I'm going to repeat the question as well, and then Senator, I'll have you come up. What steps would you take to ensure that Texas public schools and teachers have the resources and training necessary to meet the diverse needs of students with disabilities?
Good evening. I'm very pleased to join with all of you here tonight on this most important issue for children with special needs. Now, ensuring that all Texas educators are prepared to teach any student that comes into the classroom, includes those with special needs. It's really a top priority, not just of mine, but the men and women that I serve in the Education Committee in the Senate. Last session, I filed Senate Bill 293, which would strengthen teacher training requirements in fields related to special education and inclusive classroom practices. Now, while the bill received strong support in the Senate, it failed to get through the House on time. I will be working with stakeholders, both inside and outside the Capitol, especially in my senatorial district of 4.5 counties, to overcome obstacles to passing this bill in the next session. In the same spirit, I will be refiling legislation to ensure that all teachers, including those in charter schools, meet these training requirements before teaching students with special needs. Again, this is a major issue, and I think what we need to do is have a mini summit here in the Valley, in this senatorial district, inviting all the stakeholders to come before your Valley delegation so that we can discuss this fully and be prepared for next legislative session before the end of this year. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Barrera Stapleton, would you like me to repeat the question, or?
I think I've got it.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Sarah Stapleton Barrera. Thank you all for having me. Okay, so let's break it down, right? The question is really, what do we do about funding and training? The answer is simple and it's clear as day. Funding. You're not getting the funding that you need. You're hungry for the funding and it's simply not going to you. So we need to figure out where the problem is and where the kink in the chain is. And the problem is that we don't know where our money is going, but it's certainly not going to this community. Otherwise, we wouldn't have problems with paying our teachers adequate amounts. We wouldn't have problems with having resources in the classroom that go above and beyond that the special needs community needs and is entitled to and should have on the day in, day out basis. Like Mr. Cortez, my sister is also a special ed teacher up in Austin. And she calls me once a week and is saying, hey, we've got to sue. There's got to be lawsuits because it's just simply not happening. And as an attorney, I've seen and have had to take action upon different entities that are failing our special needs students. Simple, it's funding, it's not happening, it hasn't happened in the past 30 years, the time is now. Thank you.
Thank you all for answering that, and let me get to our next question. And on this one, I'm going to start with you, Senator. We just had Ms. Stapleton come up, so I'll start with you on this one, and then we'll go down and back around. And the question is, let me start by individuals with disabilities experience numerous challenges that are associated with participation in the labor force. Their unemployment rate is higher, they're more likely to work part-time, and on average, they earn less than individuals without disabilities at every level of educational attainment. If elected, what policies and legislation would you propose to improve the employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities in the Rio Grande Valley?
Thank you. We need to start with a goal that people with special needs or disabilities should be able to fully participate in the workforce with or without accommodations. I was proud to pass House Bill 3685 in the year 2015, which updated Texas rehabilitative work training programs to remove the presumption that people with disabilities are not able to fully participate in the labor market. Continuing to expand access to good jobs will require us to ensure the same education and job training opportunities are available to everyone, regardless of ability. Expanding the inclusivity of education, including the presentation of material as well as physical accessibility of campuses, has been a major goal of mine, and I look forward to continuing to create the improved policies that ensure the workforce is open to all in the next session. Thank you.
Ms. Tijerina, you want to come up?
this is really important to me because I've seen a lot of students that age out, and obviously I've seen a lot of students that they fail to identify them. First of all, I think that before they age out, and they age out if they're under IDEA, they age out at the age of 21. And so we first need to make sure that we prepare them for the real world. And I know that there's a lot of good people that are starting, you know, certain kind of organizations to start raising awareness that it's no longer IDEA and the Bible for you now to survive in this world of very neurotypical people is called the Americans with Disabilities Act. So we need an initiative to prepare them for adult living, which includes employment. We need a public service initiative to remove the stigma that people with disabilities are maybe not as capable of some kind of jobs and are maybe as capable or just as capable and sometimes even superhuman to some degree as a person with no disabilities, physical or otherwise. And one more thing is that creating an incentive policy for employees that hire folks with disabilities and who have proven themselves to be sensitive to folks with disabilities would be another good thing to do, and I would do all of those things because I've been advocating outside of an elected seat, so you guys know I'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruben. Montez, come on up.
You know, during my time on the Board of Education, I get to visit a lot of school districts across the state. One of the districts that I had an opportunity to visit was in the northernmost county that I represent, Matagorda County. I had an opportunity to visit in Bay City, Texas, in Black Cat Country. And during my visit with former Superintendent Keith Brown, we visited their special ed unit, and we were able to meet with students through a program that they have there that trains them to go out into the workforce, that trains them, shows them how to survive all their daily living skills, whether it's washing, cooking, cleaning. They were getting them employed at local flower shops, local pizzerias, local businesses were hiring them. And I was just so in awe of the program that was going on in Bay City, Texas, that I think programs like that need to be spread across the entire state. But in order for us to do that, we need to have an appropriate and proper investment in public education. As you all know, a little over $6.5 billion was put in public education just last year, but in 2011 there was $5.4 billion cut. So there's a big disconnect from when we get money to when we lose money, and this continual reinvestment into our public schools needs to happen so that we can promote programs like this and incentivize the labor market to be more proactive about this so that we can give more money to schools so that they can have these opportunities to give them to this next generation of Texans that we need to be and have ready. So that's what I would do.
Thank you. So yeah, I agree, there definitely needs to be more opportunities, but it goes beyond that, right? We gotta break it down even more simply. The first things first. And first thing is, we've got to fight these sub-minimal wage that these people are receiving, right? There's stories out there about getting paid 4 cents to the hour. I mean, we can do better than that. If you look at DC, minimum wage is $15 per hour, a livable wage, and the same minimum wage for everybody, regardless of their background or who they are or where they come from, right? So that's the first step, raising the minimum wage. Second thing we've got to do is we've got to ensure that our constitutional rights are upheld. When someone is not hired because they're special needs, or somebody is not hired because where they may fall on the spectrum, we've got to look at it and figure out, hey, what right is being infringed upon? And so with better education and knowing, hey, these are our rights, this is where we're being harmed, this is what needs to improve, that's how we expand the job growth. And we hold them to the fire. I mean, we've got to be able to fight these people, to know the law and fight these people to get what we deserve. So that is what needs to be done. on top of incentivizing. You know, if you incentivize employers, if they hire a certain percentage of people with special needs, then that may be the way to go. There's a lot of different ideas, but first things first, let's get us all paid the same. Thank you.
Thank you. And right before this started, I was speaking to some ladies who told me that they just started actually a chamber here. Would you stand just so that the candidates can see who you are? I think they're still here, Connie, there you go. And they started a chamber for this exact reason, to get employers aware and to get people that are beyond the minority age, to get adults into work and to make employers aware of the law, the rights, the capability of persons living with disabilities. So we thank you for doing that, and I think that chamber will grow. If this crowd is any indication, you're going to have a good success as a chamber. So that was the questions for our first group of panelists, and now we're going to call up our second group. So thank you all so very much. Our second group of candidates, let's start with the current incumbent, Representative Alex Dominguez, representing House District 37 in Cameron County, and his opponent, Ms. Amber Medina. I don't know if Ms. Medina's here. I hadn't seen her earlier. We also have current incumbent State Representative Sergio Munoz Jr., representing House District 36 in Hidalgo County, and his opponent, Abraham Padron. Yeah, you can sit wherever you like. Is Ms. Medina here? Just before we get started, I want to make sure we give her the opportunity. Okay. All right. Well, gentlemen, then let me start. I will go ahead and start this question. I'll start with Mr. Padron on this side, and then we'll go the other way. In the last general election, less than 20% of the polling sites were accessible to people with disabilities. Of the 167 locations that the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, was able to completely examine, both inside and out, only 29 were free of any impediments. What steps would you take to ensure that Texans with disabilities have the same access to voting, registering, and casting the ballot as Texans without disabilities?
Thank you. First, thank you for having this forum, and certainly thank you for inviting me. It's something that for myself, over the years, I've had family members that fell in the spectrum, and as a small business owner, we've been very involved with our university here with the speech and hearing and foundations that we started as a small business owner. And yes, one of the problems here that we have is voting. And I can tell you this much, one of the things, we must continue to fight against any sort of possible voter suppression bill, like, for example, the bill that was put forth as B9 in the last session. Unfortunately, it didn't pass. We need to make sure that the polls are accessible to people with disabilities. We need to make sure that they have the signs out there to make sure, and we have to expect that from our polls and our people. I would, as your future state representative, I can tell you that one of the things we're going to do is we're going to fight for that. We're going to make sure that we get our polls, because every vote counts. Not just if you don't have disabilities, if you have disabilities or you don't, we got to get you out to vote. We have a very low voter turnout in our area, and if one way is to get people with disabilities to make sure that they're able to step out and vote, we're all for it. And I can tell you this much, regardless whether my opponent or I win or any one of us, I'm glad to see that so many of the candidates are here to support all of us and support the people with disabilities. Thank you.
Representative Munoz, you want to come on up?
Good evening, and I just want to say thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be with you and for getting us together to talk about the issues that matter to each and every one of you, not only here, but throughout the Rio Grande Valley. The first thing we need to do is obviously fight any attempt on voter suppression or anything that's gonna try to negate somebody's right to vote. If our early voting sites or election day voting sites are not complying with ADA or any accessible requirements that are required under state or federal law, then they should not be utilized. That should be first and foremost what the elections office should look at, especially here on the county level. If it's not gonna be accessible, then they shouldn't use it, period. There's plenty of sites within Hidalgo County that are accessible, that have the requirements, that should be utilized and that could be used at the expense of necessarily not offering that opportunity to everybody involved. In addition to that, on the state level, if these locations are gonna be used and they're not gonna be accessible, not gonna have the requirements, then I think the state needs to come in and prevent them from being used here on the state or local level for voting. So anything that we can do to make sure that they're complying with the law and enforcing the law is something that's gonna be extremely important for all of us here. Every vote is important, every vote counts, and although we have curbside voting, one of the things that is also a challenge is making sure that our polling sites have enough individuals that can assist with curbside voting. That's another thing that the elections department should be looking at and making sure that there's enough individuals on hand to assist with people that are gonna be using curbside voting. Thank you very much.
Representative Dominguez?
Thank you. Good evening. I was a former county commissioner in a previous life, and I'll tell you that our commissioners court worked closely with the recommendations of the elections board, which they made to the elections director. But one thing that we always tried to do was make sure that all voting sites were accessible. I think I just realized an even easier solution. We should pass legislation to require that one member of the elections board be an advocate for the disabled. That way their input and their ability to go to each voting site, whether it's early voting or actual precinct voting, they can make that tour, they can see the sites and see what needs to be changed, or if they need to find a new place altogether. That's the first solution. The second one, and I think goes to a larger effort to fight voter suppression. I think Texas should finally pass legislation that allows same-day registration so they can vote that same day. Those are my ideas.
And I think we're doing okay on time. I've got a third question then for you guys. Since we only have 3 of you up here, not 4, I think we can do that. So your question is, there are approximately 21,000 individuals served by Medicaid home and community-based waivers in Texas. However, as of November 2019, there are approximately 285,274 children, young adults, and seniors with disabilities waiting for services in their communities. Many people wait over 12 years to receive services in the community, yet there is no wait to enter nursing homes or other institutions. What steps would you take to eliminate the current waiting list for home and community services? Let me start with you on that one, Representative Dominguez.
I think number one, we should all get to the Capitol next January and demand that the governor start accepting federal funds, expand our Medicare and Medicaid accessibility. There's billions of dollars that we are turning down every year that go to your kids, to your families, to make their lives better. That's number one. We should be demanding that. 2, I think we need to expand the use of LPPFs in our communities. It's basically a hospital system that applies by permission to the state to start drawing down those federal dollars. It's a new type of program. It started in a few counties not all that long ago. This past session, I think we approved about 8 of them throughout Texas. Look how many hospitals we have in the state that are providing care for children. Using these LPPFs, we can be smart with the money, not offend the governor, and still bring down those federal dollars to provide service to your kids, to your family members. Third, I think we can finally pass legislation to demand the expansion of these funds being made accessible. Let's have that floor fight. I think come November, we're gonna be in pretty good shape in the Texas House of Representatives, so I'm ready to take it on with the Senate as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Representative Munoz?
Well, I think the first thing we need to do is anybody who's worked with a Medicaid managed care program or Medicaid in general has seen how difficult and challenging it has been over the years, especially dealing with the MCOs. I personally am not a fan of the system. I think at the end of the day, the money should be going to the individual, to the patient, not to a corporation that many times is located outside of Texas. One of the things that the legislature has worked on for many sessions is making sure that we can increase the rate enhancement or the amount being paid for our attendance on an hourly basis. This past session, there was an additional $9 million that was put in comparison with the federal funds of $14 million, having to do with rate enhancement programs for community care and intellectual and developmental disability providers. However, one of the things that we see is less and less people that want to be involved in Medicaid, less and less providers because of the reimbursement rate. If we can work to make sure that there's more people that are participating, that they're providing that service, and if there's ever a push to get rid of managed care, I for one would be the first person in line to say that it's not working and we need to go back to a system, even if it was a fee for service, where people are getting the services that they're contracted with to get. Thank you.
Mr. Calderon?
Certainly, as both gentlemen here spoke about funding, certainly is how we're gonna find the funding. And one of the things is we need to go to the Capitol, whether it's federal money, whether it's state money, we need to bring that funding to you. Okay, we need to bring it to our children, to our young adults, and we have to find a way. Now, what I can tell you is, as your state representative, I'm committed to doing this. I'm committed to working, to finding the resources that we need for our children in the Rio Grande Valley and in Texas. Now, if for some reason we need to look at the people that we need to get out and vote, and the people that are not supporting what our children need, we need to vote them out. I, as a new state representative, pledge to you to look for those fundings. Thank you.
And my mistake, I said that we were on the third question. Y'all were answering so fast, I thought we were, and we're actually, that was only the second question. So I am going to pose the third question to you. And that question is, make sure it's not the same one. Oh, this is very important in today's society. We are all aware of the recent event in Hidalgo County of the student with autism that was bullied, verbally assaulted, and physically assaulted by another student in his classroom. What steps would you take to help foster a culture of anti-bullying in our community? Let me start with you on that one, Representative Munoz.
Well, we did pass Senate Bill 759, which had to do with cyberbullying, protecting our children on social media. One of the biggest concerns that we had as an office with the incident that happened in Hidalgo was, where was there a teacher or somebody working on behalf of the district, and why did it take so long of a time for them to come in to assist? Because they should have had an individual there, whether it was a paraprofessional or a teacher or somebody working on behalf of the district that could have seen the incident right away, could have taken action, and would have not allowed for it to occur the way that it did. And it's very unfortunate too that it has to be posted on social media when something like that should have not happened should have not happened to begin with. For us, it's working with the district, working with our families, working with parents, one, any anti-bullying campaigns that we can have, and two, making sure that our districts have enough professionals and people in place that can prevent this from happening again in the future. The third thing is, those that are involved in any type of bullying, any type of unfortunate things that are happening need to be held accountable. And a lot of times people think, well, it's not just the student, it's even the parents. Because if they're not getting the education or the discipline and the respect at home, then they need to be also held accountable in terms of being able to teach their children outside of the classroom. So for us going forward, we want to work not only with the district, but we want to work throughout the state to make sure that incidents like that do not happen again.
Thank you. Mr. Calderon?
Well, first of all, we need to foster a culture of anti-bullying. And we must educate our students as soon as they enter school, not wait till later, but let's get them right as young as we can to educate them. Secondly, to do this, we must mandate instruction about mental health, suicide prevention, bullying, cyberbullying, and harassment in the required curriculum for public school students. Education. Lastly, in addition, school districts and open enrollment charter schools should be required to report information regarding acts of bullying and cyberbullying to the state education agency or any other agency that keeps data on these schools. I believe that we need to work diligently on this, And this would be some steps that would get us in the right direction. Thank you.
Representative Dominguez.
You know, last school semester, I was at Veterans Memorial High School in Brownsville, and they became the first all-inclusive high school in the Rio Grande Valley. And basically what that means is every student at that school bought in to being part of a community where nobody is seen as different. And they celebrated those students that had disabilities and made them a part of it. They became part of the musical group, the mariachi. They became part of the dancers. And I think what this program goes to show is, one, it brings awareness to the teachers, the teacher aides, the cafeteria workers, the bus drivers, that they're a little bit more aware that we need to be looking out for everybody and make sure that bullying doesn't take place. But more importantly, this developed a culture on the campus where the students themselves are advocates, where they will stick up for other people that might be the victim of bullying. Maybe because they have a disability, maybe because they're just a little different. Bullying is a problem in our schools that's not limited just to those that have disabilities. We've been working on legislation already to try to fight bullying, and that involves bringing more money into our schools to train our teachers and our paraprofessionals to locate these types of activities going on, not just in our classrooms, but in after-school activities, on our school buses, even at other events, even on the street as kids are heading home. This is something that we gotta tackle head on. This is part of our culture. We need to realize that there might be somebody a little different than you, or maybe somebody that you're picking on them just because they're a little bit younger, or because you can. We felt that when we were younger, and I'll tell you, I take this to heart, because I had a younger brother who was disabled, and we saw how he was treated differently. So we need to take care of this, not just at the Capitol, not just in DC or Austin, but in our own schools and in our own homes. Let's equip our kids with the tools they need to identify bullying, be brave enough to tell you or tell somebody about it, and have our schools have the courage and the tools necessary to deal with it. And I'm here to help for that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think all of the candidates have said it very well, and we are the example. We have to start with ourselves, and it's not just children that are on social media, it's adults as well, and so bullying isn't limited to children, but we are the example and the role models. We should be the role models for our children. So please give a warm thanks to all of these candidates. Thank you so much. Now we're going to call up our third group of candidates, and these are the incumbents for House District 41. Actually, I'm a little partial to it. That was the district that I represented in the Texas House of Representatives. So I'd like to call up the current incumbent, State Representative Bobby Guerra, representing House District 41 in Hidalgo County, and the opponents for this House District, Mr. Richard Gonzalez and Dr. John Guerra. And we also have, I'm not sure if he's here or not, but we were going to also have incumbent State Representative Terry Canales. Did he make it here this evening? I don't know if he's joining us. He represents House District 40. So we'll do for House District 41. Thank you for being here this evening with us. And questions? You have an extra second. Maybe did the last class run out? Mr. Ballot. Thank you, sir. All right, gentlemen, we're going to start. This is question number 2, and it is: an estimated 1.9 million Texans with disabilities do not leave their homes due to a lack of adequate transportation services. Barriers to transportation may prevent a person with a disability from getting to their job, assessing non-emergency medical care, taking care of everyday household errands, or just participating in recreational and social activities. What steps should the state of Texas take to increase access to public transportation for urban and rural Texans with disabilities? I'll start with you, Dr. John Guerra.
Well, thank you very much for DAC for inviting me. I'm the Republican conservative side that's running against the Democratic side. And one of the things that I've seen here is that the majority of us over a long period of time have been Democratic. And we've asked the Democratic Party to help us down here in the Valley. But the Democratic Party really hasn't been hearing the Rio Grande Valley for a long period of time. And so that's why I'm running as a conservative and Republican, as a Hispanic, to hopefully get the rest of the state to look at us down here in the Hispanic area to give us more and to help us as it has been, and especially in the disability area. So to answer the question here, being a physician, many of the Medicaid patients come to my office. They call the day before, and they are picked up and brought to the office to undergo obstetrical and gynecological care in my office, as well as family practice, etc. So I would also encourage the use of that to bring about and help those people that with the disabilities to come forward and to be able to come and to be part of the system. The other part would be, as you have seen here in McAllen, the transportation of the buses. And so we would also try to expect or help maybe Uber, Lyft, all of the taxi services that would get them to the busing system that would be available to help them get to where they need to be. So I believe firmly that there is a way to help the disabled people of the Rio Grande Valley to get to their jobs and to the things that they need. Thank you.
Representative Guerra?
Thank you, Veronica. You know, before I answer that question, I'd like to do a shout out to two people who had a tremendous impact on me before last session. Addison and Becca Bortnick. Before the session started last time, there was a panel that was put together in McAllen, and I saw these young people who have so much to give and so much to offer to our society, to the Valley and to the state of Texas. And Becca and Addison, would you please stand up? You guys really touched my heart. Please stand up. Thank you so much. Forums like this are so important. As a result of that evening, I made it a point to file a bill that ended up being Senate Bill 1017, which creates an advisory council, Texas Advisory Council for Higher Ed, for that council to study ways for these kids, these young people, to be able to empower themselves and learn how important it is to be a part of an important part of a productive society, because they have so much to offer. And Addison, you taught me that.
Aww.
I'm also a past board president of the Easter Seals. I've been a member of Easter Seals for many years, and I understand many of these issues. And more particularly concerning public transportation, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we provide that transportation to these students, provide that public transportation to the public, but especially those who have these challenges. We should not be creating barriers. It's important that we open the door. And the only way we can do that is to make sure that these folks, these young people, have an opportunity to get from one place to the next. And I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we go to our local leaders to help us find those dollars for those transportation needs. And again, thank you. You two really touched my heart. And that's why I passed that bill, 1017. It's gonna make a real difference in our world. Thank you so much.
us.
taught him that. I know you taught him that.
Thank you, Veronica. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you to all the local organizations that put this inaugural forum on. I think that these are extremely important issues, and the more people I talk to, and the more houses that I go visit, and the more doors I knock on, it has really opened my eyes to the serious issues that are facing the community down here. Now, what can we do about transportation? Well, number one, we have to be vigilant and to make sure that we are advocating for funds for public transportation. That's of course going to be number one. Number two, kind of piggybacking off of what Doc John said, I think that with Medicaid, they do provide currently a program where individuals are given rides to doctor's appointments. What can we do to help the community of disabled individuals here in the Rio Grande Valley? Well, I think we can expand on that program. We can look to include a similar system that is tailor-fit to the needs of the disabled community, whether it be rides to work, rides to school, rides to go do other daily needs. But if we can look at the system that's already in place, and what I would like to do as your next state rep is sit down with your organizations down here and have your input into what we can do together to make sure that the system that we put in place is the best system and it is tailor-fit for the disability community, because I think that is something that needs to be addressed immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wanted to echo something that was said about Addison. She is a tremendous advocate for people living with disabilities. In fact, she was in our Easter Seals telethon, and then she wowed everybody at the style show. She was the best model, and I don't think any of the other models will mind me saying that, but she was the best model in the show, and she seemed to really enjoy it too. She went to the end of the stage and she did her turnarounds, and she came back and she wanted to do it again. So we thank her, and she really opened eyes for people that were there and may not know anyone living with a disability or may not have one in their family. She showed them that just because you have some challenges in your own life doesn't mean that you can't live your life to the fullest. So thank you so much, Addison. Let me ask you another question, gentlemen. And we asked this question earlier of another group, and I hope that you were here to hear it. But we mentioned about how there were 21,000 individuals that were served by Medicaid home and community-based waivers in Texas. But as of November 2019, there are approximately 285,000 children, young adults, and seniors that are living with disabilities and waiting for services in their community, some waiting over 12 years to receive the services. But yet there's no way to enter the nursing homes or other institutions. So what steps would you take to eliminate the current waiting list for home and community services? I'll start with you, Mr. Gonzalez.
This is an issue that is extremely important to a lot of the families out there that I have spoken to. We've had conversations at length, and the issues that they're facing are not looking any better over the past couple of years. In 2019, Texas ranked 51st in reaching out to those in need. Now, to me, that sends a message. It sends a message that children and adults with disabilities just aren't important. And you know what? That's absolutely not okay. What we need to do is we need to go back and we need to find out why Texas is not accepting that federal money. It was mentioned earlier, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. Why are we not accepting the federal dollars that can be so useful to Texas families down here in the Rio Grande Valley? Why can't we not expand Medicaid to help out those individuals and those families as well? And another thing, instead of using all of these state funds for state-supported living centers, why don't we use that money to help out with the waivers? There are solutions to these problems. We just have to be able to tackle them head on.
Representative Guerra?
Thank you, Veronica. Health and Human Services, the budget in the state of Texas is $33.7 billion, which accounts for 28.4% of the state's budget. We are still significantly underfunding some of our necessary programs, such as therapy services, so that we can keep the clients who are being served by the Medicaid program in their homes and their community. Unfortunately, the Republicans, many of the Republicans in the House of Representatives and in the Senate don't see it that way. As an example, I was a joint author on HB 25 from the last special session. This bill sought to restore drastic funding cuts that were made to therapy services, legislation that was passed through the House, but for some reason, the 31 senators couldn't get it done in the Senate. The Democrat senators wanted to get it done, but they were outnumbered. So let's remember that. It's extremely important. I think you're going to hear us all say that these funding cuts be restored as best we can. 28.4% of the state's budget. Well, you know what, folks? Our state has in its rainy day fund billions of dollars in our rainy day fund, which is basically a fund that's created by oil and gas revenues that come to the state that's set aside for programs just like this. And I will tell you, I have been fighting for those issues since I have been in the state legislature. The Rio Grande Valley delegation has been fighting for those issues, and I will continue to fight for those issues as long as I get to serve in the House of Representatives, and I plan to go back and fight for you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Guerrero, before I call you up, I want you to, everyone to welcome Representative Terry Canales, who's joining us with House District 40. He is the incumbent, and he doesn't have an opponent up here, but I'm going to allow him to answer this question as well. So let me read the question, and then I'll allow Dr. Guerrero to answer, and then Representative Canales. So the question was, there are approximately 21,000 individuals served by Medicaid home and community-based waivers in Texas. However, as of November 2019, there are approximately 285,000 children, young adults, and seniors with disabilities waiting for services in their communities. Some people have had to wait over 12 years to receive services in their community, yet there's no way to enter nursing homes or other institutions. What steps would you take to eliminate the current waiting list for home and community services? Dr. Guerra?
One of the big things that I would do and push is that sometimes we expect government to do everything for us. And sometimes the government can't fulfill all of those pledges and what they have always said that they're going to do it, even with funding and budgeting and etc. And so sometimes you have to go out into the public sector and ask the public sector to take part and help the government. And that's us. And as a physician and not a real politician up here, that's the way that I see it. As a physician, my job is to see patients and to bring about the best thing that is available to them and to get the best care that they can get. That's what my pledge was and my oath was. So I would try to get more public sector people involved and helping the disabled people here. The other thing would be that there would be a consideration of bringing in a department just specifically for disabilities. And that way, we could triage the situations that are available to each and every person. Because each and every person is a different person. It's not just disabilities of everybody. And so we need to streamline it and make it specific to each and every person. Thank you.
Representative Canales.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for welcoming me. I think Veronica said earlier, I don't have an opponent. And That's kind of what this is about. It's not just showing up when you have an opponent. Because people with disabilities need advocates that are gonna fight for them all the time. And the reality is this, it's absolutely shameful that Texas, I think, is 48 out of 50 states. That's where we rank on spending for people with disabilities. The reality is this, is that some of our brightest minds are people with disabilities. People like Stephen Hawking, perfect example. The reality is this, that when we don't spend on helping the disabled community, when we don't spend time on recruiting, when we don't spend time on bringing them into the workforce, it ends up costing the state more. We have to do a better job. Now, what would I do? Well, unfortunately, at this point, much of the power, if not all the power, lies in the Republican majority. The Republican majority has crushed all efforts to expand Medicaid, and they see it as somewhat of a welfare handout, which is nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. What we need is a more political will and explaining to the Republican majority and getting them to understand that Texas and people that are disabled are not looking for a handout. We're looking for a hand. And the reality is, if we can help the people that are disabled in our community, we elevate our community in and of itself. We elevate ourselves. Participation, engagement, and making sure that the people who have the needs are properly funded is absolutely pertinent. It is the cornerstone and the foundation of who we are as a society. And to say we're going to ostracize, we're not going to fund it, we're not going to let you participate, or we're not going to help you is downright shameful. And I can tell you, we need to call those people out. We need to call those people out and let them know. We're watching you. We're seeing you. We understand you don't think the people that are disabled are entitled or don't have or shouldn't be entitled to the same relief or don't deserve any help. Well, that's nonsense. And so in this world, when we help people, we help ourselves. When we treat people who are disabled as if they're equal because they are equal, then we elevate ourselves. We elevate ourselves as a society, and it's absolutely necessary. It's absolutely fundamental. It is the cry of Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech when we can rise up and fulfill the true meaning of our creed that all men are created equal. And just because you're disabled doesn't mean that you're not equal. And so what we need to do is vote. We need to make sure that the people who go, when you go to the ballot box, understand that when you vote for a Republican, and that is the reality, when you vote for a Republican, you vote against people with disabilities. And making sure that the public understands that. Well,
no, I don't agree with that.
Well, you can comment all you want, and anybody who disagrees with me can comment all they want, but the reality is I've sat on the floor for going on 10 years, and I can tell you that the Republican Party votes against people with disabilities every single time. Thank you.
Some of us are seeking to change that.
Thank you. Representative Canales, I know you are the chair of the Transportation Committee right now, and one of the questions we had earlier dealt with transportation, so I'm going to ask you to answer that question as well, and then we will end this panel. An estimated 1.9 million Texans with disabilities do not leave their homes due to a lack of adequate transportation services. Barriers to transportation may prevent a person with a disability from getting to their job, assessing non-emergency medical care, taking care of everyday household errands, or just participating in recreational and social activities. So what steps should the state of Texas take to increase access to public transportation for urban and rural Texans with disabilities?
This is real simple. It's funding. It's funding. And those again, if you disagree with me, I can prove it. I can show you the proof is in the pudding. The funding and the budget is controlled by the Republican majority, and every single effort that's been made to expand funding and access for people with disabilities has been fought furiously, ferociously, and shot down and trampled. And so anybody who disagrees, it's not a matter of you want to it's not me. I'm not making it up. I can show you the videos. I can show you the votes. I can show you who they are and what they do. In order to provide better access, and that's true, and you need to understand that most people are locked and can't leave their homes because we don't have access. Our restaurants, our voting, and I'll tell you this, every single session since I've been there, the Republican majority has tried to stifle voting. And one of them is access to people who need assistance voting. Even that, helping you vote if you're disabled has become an issue. Now we can't help people vote. Why? Because those people tend to vote Democrat. Why? Because Democrats tend to help people that are disabled, and that's the reality. And if you don't like it, well, I'm sorry, the truth hurts.
I'll respond to you on Facebook.
Well, on that note, we want to thank everyone for coming out, and we do want to remind everyone that early voting is going to start here in about a week and a half. It's very, very important that you vote, because many times you will not have the ability to go to Austin and advocate. You will not have you do not know somebody personally that will do it, but you do have to vote, and everybody's vote is equal. So please go out and make sure that your vote is heard and cast, and we thank you all so very much for coming out tonight and supporting the disability community.
Hey folks, real quick, this next session, I encourage each and every one of you to come to Austin. I really do. Come see your house. Come see it's your house, it's your capital. But I remember when Becca and Addison came up there, they helped me change minds and we got that bill passed. So thank you.
Go give him a big hug.
Before we close, we just wanted to say an extra thank you to Veronica Gonzalez for being our mediator today. That was wonderful. Moderator, thank you. And we also want to recognize all the different people who made this event possible. We started this coalition as a small group, but we've reached out to so many different disability organizations across the valley and have seen a great response. And so just tonight, I want to make sure that I thank people that are here. We so appreciate Easter Seals for your support. Team Mario, thank you for coming, for spreading the word. Bevo's Angels, thank you for coming. Special Olympics is here. The Disability Chamber of Commerce is here. Partners Resource Network is here. Down by the Border is here. We have a fantastic group. We also want to thank Dr. Meziku from RGV who did this study. There we go. Disability Services in the Valley. We could not do this without our whole community behind us. And so thank you. We look forward to working with all of you. Oh, well, and of course, Vail, Capable Kids, RGV DSA, and Texas Partners in Policy Making. Thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you.